He actually had the most Hispanic support of any Republican presidential candidate ever.
Wow. Okay, there's a quote.
I think people basically they believe in his message. And he was someone also, as we saw him going out to McDonald's and other bodegas and things, he went out and he listened to the people. He listened to their concerns.
Well, hello and welcome to the Anand Film Scoop.
Hello. Yes, we're in New York.
Yes, we're in a different location, as you've probably noticed.
Yes.
Why are we in New York, Philip? More about that later.
More about that later. First, so what's on the show today? We're going to talk about Trump's cabinet picks. El Presidente is going to be choosing his personnel, and
including a friend, a very good friend of this show, a very good friend of ours,
who's going to be in one of the most important parts of the administration.
We hope.
Most important posts in the administration, maybe. So he's been talked about it, but we'll talk about that later on the show. What happened to Garbagegate? Why didn't we investigate? Why didn't Hispanic voters behave the way the left told them to? What is the world coming to, Anne McElhinney, when the field hands just won't obey their masters anymore? We're going to have anarchy, I tell you, anarchy. We look at how Hispanic voters turned out in record numbers for Trump. We were told by the left that they were angry about the threatened deportations. We were told they couldn't take a joke, especially a joke about another Hispanic nation. They were told it was just going to be a disaster for Trump. So we speak to someone whose job it was to turn out the Hispanic votes. That person is not Donald Trump, someone else whose job it was, because Trump basically turned out the Hispanic vote in many ways. So we'll talk about that later on the show as well. And, you know, as the left remind us often, Europe is just better than America. It's just better.
In every way.
Yeah, but they even do anti-Semitism better than the Yanks, you know.
No, they can teach the whole world to do anti-Semitism properly.
They've been at it a lot longer, I suppose.
They've had the practice.
Yes, and we bring you the latest on the anti-Semitic attacks in Amsterdam, and one in Ireland you may not have heard of. And
interestingly, we're talking about anti-Semitism.
Yes.
That's also a reason why we're in New York.
Yes, we're going to the Jewish Media Awards, right?
And this is a set of awards. This is the second year it's in existence.
Yes.
Highlighting and celebrating representations of Jews in movies and on television.
Yes, and various places. So it's run by a group called Jews in the City, which is a clever play on words, I think, on Sex in the City.
Oh, yeah, very good. I like that. Yeah, because I think it was founded in New York.
Yes,
yeah.
Jews in the City. So, yes, so it's the second Jewish Media Awards.
And there's all kinds of people being celebrated. It'll be very interesting, and we'll be able to tell you all about it next week, by the way.
Yes.
Because we're going.
Okay, so you know, for example, so there's the I'm going to, of course, totally mispronounce this, but the Keter Shem Tov Awards, honoring proud and authentic Jewish representation in TV and film. You got Sheryl Sandberg, Screams Before Silence, which is an amazing documentary. Produced by Sheryl Sandberg, who was the number 2 in Facebook for many years, about the attacks on women, and an amazing documentary. Then there's FX The Patient, which we don't know.
No, we don't know that
TV
at all.
Show. Then there's the Netflix show Fauda. Now, funny, I would argue that the show Fauda really either. It's wrong to say that, you know, that it led up to the October 7 attacks. I think the Faudaization of Israel probably left the door open for the October 7 attacks, in the sense we watched the first couple of episodes of Fauda, and it's very cops and robbers. So
it wasn't dealing with the fundamental ideologies that were at
it's very much
question.
Good Islam, because most of the people are just good and they want to get married and have children and live happy,
which is exactly
lives.
The attitude actually of the people who attended the Nova Festival, you know, the Jewish young people that we met, who had the world that they had lived in, maybe the Fauda world that you're describing, that they had lived in, where we're really all the same, we're really fundamentally all the same, we just want to love each other and we want to dance and we want to take drugs or whatever it was they wanted to do, and suddenly they're then confronted with a reality where there is an incredibly large population of people who actually have one central ideology, and that is the annihilation of those people who were dancing and taking drugs and thinking that everything was just lovely and we're all really the same.
And the annihilation of them because they were Jewish and because they supported radical Islam. So Fauda completely whitewashed all of that. There's never a mention of radical Islam.
At least, well, in fairness, I think it's possibly fair, and I should intervene and say this, that we watched 2 episodes. We weren't impressed, but I should mention that the whole world film is very impressed by Fauda, so maybe we were missing something and maybe we needed to watch more of it. But our initial impression certainly was that they weren't dealing with the fundamental differences between the two sides.
I see another show that's been honoured there, Jewish matchmaking.
Oh, I'd really like to see that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. What do you mean he's a doctor and he's only been to Stanford and Harvard? My daughter deserves better than that.
It's funny. It's funny just when you say that, Film, that just before we left Los Angeles, we were supposed to fly at a really early flight, and then we got this invitation to a bris, and we'd never been to a bris before, and and I was all excited about going to a bris, and then I realised that the bris was for twin babies, a little girl and a little boy. And then, of course, it dawned on me, I'm a bit slow on the uptake sometimes, what was involved with the bris. But anyway, you're all so smart that in what's involved with that. But I want to move on from that part of it, because actually that didn't really bother us that much. Actually, it didn't, and it happened very good. Yes, let's move past that and just go to the fact that the father of the baby made the most amazing speech, and I really wish I'd taped it. And I must ask the people involved if they have a tape of it, or even if they have the actual text, because I'd actually like to read a bit of it. But one of the things they had in it, just when Phelim talks about these Jewish people with very unimpressive pedigree, like really extraordinary people, and and so regularly you'll meet Jewish people and they just have these amazing stories. But I love this one where the young man who's the new father of these twins was describing the reason for the names of the babies. And he was talking about the name of the baby girl, and part of her name is going to be Bluma. And he said, and Bluma, and then he went into this description of Bluma. So Bluma, because in honor of her great-grandmother, of Polish origin, came to the United States, went to Vassar, and then became, got into naval intelligence, very basically, not impressive at all there. And then she's
translated cables in 14 languages.
I forgot that. She spoke 14 languages, of course, I almost forgot that bit. Yeah. And then, things started to be happening in Germany, and she was realizing, the rise of Hitler and Nazism, and could see the writing on the wall, as it were. And so she tried to arrange visas for the family to come out of Poland, and there was all kinds of drama. She wasn't successful. Then she met a very significant person and really, implored this person to intervene on their behalf. So basically, through strength of personality, strength of perseverance, she got visas for them all. And he stood there.
But on the last boat.
On the last boat out of Poland.
Leaving Poland.
I'm literally getting chills just remembering this. And then he said, this lovely young man said, "Our Bluma is here, and we're all here because of the strength and the power and the resilience of this Bluma." Yeah. So anyway, just when you say, Phelim, about, so you
Jewish
so
matchmakers,
often, yes, Jewish matchmakers, I just think that is a show I would really like to watch.
Yeah, we should check out where it's on. Then also being honoured are Jews, the BBC documentary Jews Don't Count by David Baddiel. Now, David Baddiel is a British comedian.
And he's Jewish. But he famously wrote a book.
I have not seen Jews Don't Count, the documentary. I have read, and I think I've mentioned it on this show many times, the book Jews Don't Count, which I would say I'm single-handedly responsible for making it a bestseller. I've been giving it to everyone I've ever met, and people I haven't met.
What is it about? So just maybe can you say it kind of succinctly? What is it about the book that you would highly recommend? I mean, by the way, what a great title! By the way, immediately jumps at the page. So this is a Jewish man writing a book that's titled "Jews Don't Count."
This was written before October 7th, and he was saying, we're all into identity politics now, as is he, kind of, because he's a liberal British person. But funny, Jews are not part of Jews. You could argue Jews are the most oppressed people ever.
Because they're left out of the DEI.
No, most of
calculation.
no, they're actually the most. They've had holocausts and pogroms and slavery ended in most of the Western world 150 years ago. Up and the Holocaust was within living memory. So but the Jews are not part of an oppressed identity group. And they're simultaneous, so when they're dividing up the DEI spoils, the Jews get nothing. In fact, the Jews are seen as both, they're funny, they fit whatever, they don't count in the divvying up of DEI and the divvying up of identity groups. I mean, it's a brilliant book. It's a small book, but it's one of those books where you read a page and you think, I need to go back and read that. There's so much packed into that page.
When I hear you saying that about the fact that they don't count because in the oppressor-oppressed narrative or this dialectic, they get left out completely. And it brings to mind a story of a very good friend of ours whose son was at a prestigious private school in Los Angeles, and they were a Jewish family. And the school phoned our friend and said, we're not happy with how, and I'm going to keep this all very anonymous. We're very unhappy with how your son is not behaving well. And our friend was like shocked because this kid is a really good kid and really smart and whatever. So the father is really concerned and said, "Oh my God, what's he done? This is terrible." And the answer from the school was, he is unwilling to accept his white privilege.
Yeah.
And the father,
argued against
and was arguing against the fact that he had white privilege. Our friend and the father of the child said to the teacher, I think I can understand that because his grand aunt watched her brother dig his own grave and then be shot into it. Most of his family were annihilated in Europe in living memory. That maybe that's why he doesn't think he's a product of white privilege, and the teacher did not apologize and say, I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. Of course, I didn't think of the Jewish problem, and in fact, her guns. And anyway, that child is no longer in that school, and our friends moved out of state because of it. And we think that they were right.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to meeting David Baddiel. They say you should never meet your heroes. I'll probably be a slobbering fan in front of them and sound like the most inarticulate idiot.
Moving on.
Anyway, so that's where we're going tomorrow night.
Yes. But we will tell you all about it, and we really will tell you all about it. And by the way, lots of very famous people are going to be there, like Mayim Bialik from The Big Bang Theory and Patricia Heaton and all kinds of people. But we will tell you more about that.
We'll fill you in.
But obviously, this is a huge week in politics, and now it's interesting that the Trump team, I think, as opposed to the first time they were elected, they really are cranking things up to a high level very, very quickly. Apparently, the transition work is being done at Mar-a-Lago, and a lot of names are being mentioned in terms of, who's going to be in the cabinet, etc.
I just hope that I hope that they get good people. Now, so just what we know. So our friend and friend of the show, Mark Paoletta. Mark's been on a number of times on our show. He's also a board member of our 501c3, the Unreported Story Society.
And he's been spoken of as a possible Attorney General.
Yes.
And just to remind everyone, because maybe you don't all know, so Mark was the General Counsel at the OMB during the last Trump presidency. Before that, he was part of the Bush 41 administration, and he was a central figure in the confirmation of Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
He is an exceptional lawyer, and from our point of view as well, an exceptional human being. And we would be very, very happy, by the way, to see Mark in a very significant role in the new administration.
Yeah, we've known him for a lot of years, and he's been particularly active, And by the way, he's not getting paid for it or anything. He's particularly active in defending Clarence Thomas
against the myriad, constant and relentless attacks.
Just for example, to show you what and you see the thing is the headlines are very impressive. Clarence Thomas, and this is a recent story, didn't declare $250,000 dollar vacation in private resort, right? And you're thinking, wow.
Yeah, wow. Big story.
Maybe it wasn't 250, but it was hundreds. I remember it was hundreds of thousands. It was a massive amount of money. And, even I was going, wow. So what happened was the Democrats changed the ethics rules, right, to say that you must declare any staying in a place that is owned by a limited company, right?
Yes.
Right. So if you stay in a resort owned by Marriott Inc., you have to declare that you didn't pay for. That's a gift, right? So under these rules, so Clarence Thomas had to declare he stayed in this place, and they looked at it, the value of the property, and said, well, how much would a nightly room be there, and all that, and they came to this ridiculous total of $250,000, massive amount of money. So, little known fact about really rich people. Actually, maybe not really rich people. In America, it's a thing people do. We don't have it so much in Ireland or in Europe. Is people buy houses under trusts or under limited companies, often for anonymity reasons, or to protect the asset for all sorts of business reasons, right? But it's a family home, but it's not owned by a family member.
It's not a vacation resort.
No, it's not a vacation resort. So it's owned by a limited company set up. In fact, New York, that's a standard way to protect your privacy is you set up a limited company, you have a lawyer.
I think we had a house at one point in Los Angeles, and I think we didn't have our names on it because we had been doxxed. We had a previous place that we were living in Los Angeles, and the left decided because we'd made a documentary negative about some environmentalists, they decided to publish our address.
That's right.
So we actually had to leave that home and move, and so that next home we bought, we actually put it in some kind of I can't remember.
A limited company,
whatever, or a trust or whatever.
So that when someone goes to the public records, all they see is a limited company.
Yeah, they couldn't find out our address.
They couldn't see that we were living there. So rich people do that all the time for security reasons also. And I think New York, lots of people do it as well for security reasons. You don't want bad people knowing where you live. So Clarence Thomas was staying for a few weeks in a friend's house. In a friend's very nice house. Now, it's a very, very nice house. And, they went, well, if he was paying the market rate for the staff and for the house and for all that, and he was probably the only guest there, or two or three guests there. So, wow, well, that's, that. So they came up with this ridiculous total of hundreds of thousands he would pay if this was a real resort. And, and it's just, anyway, Mark Paoletta, who's wonderfully active on Twitter,
and actually we'll put his Twitter handle up there, because I would recommend to everyone to follow Mark on Twitter, because he's really
he tells you the truth,
and he's very active. He loves X, actually. He loves Twitter.
Yes,
so he's there all the time.
At Mark Paoletta, MarkPaoletta. We'll put it up on the screen
and
there.
Go back into the archive of Mark's tweets, because if you're interested in the whole Clarence Thomas story and of all these attacks against Clarence Thomas, there isn't one attack that Mark hasn't spoken to and explained, and it's extraordinary just what an injustice is being done to Clarence Thomas,
yes.
who according to Mark, and I think according to many legal scholars, is our greatest Supreme Court justice.
Talking of Supreme Court justice, you seeing what the left are freaking out about now, or what the latest machinations that they're planning?
Yes.
Or they're fantasizing about Sonia Sotomayor.
Trying to push her out and get Kamala in instead. Or anybody in instead.
So the background of this is that Sonia Sotomayor is
just 70. Well, just turned 70.
Yes. So, and has diabetes, but, and so therefore they're saying, well, what happens if something happens to her in the during the Trump term? She will be replaced. All the two other liberals on the Supreme Court are like teenagers, right? If they live the average life expectancy, they'll be there till the next century. So, but Sonia Sotomayor, given they're worried that she may she may be incapacitated or worse during the Trump term, and they're afraid of another Ruth Bader Ginsburg situation, where, remember, Ruth Bader Ginsburg died in the last weeks of the Trump administration the last time, and was replaced by Amy Coney Barrett. So they're worried that Sonia Sotomayor may not be available. So they're saying to her, resign now, like right now, and they can replace her.
But she's resisting.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, she's resisting. She's saying, I'm not going anywhere. No, that's what I've seen so far this morning.
I didn't even know she'd gone to the... I didn't even think she'd responded, dignified it with a response. But that's how freaked out they are. because they're worried about almost a permanent
Conservative majority. So in other news about who is being appointed to positions, one that we're all very clear about is Susie Wiles, who has been given the job, who was Trump's campaign manager and will now go on to become his chief of staff. And for everyone who's a DEI fan, who's nobody in this room obviously, and nobody on this panel. But for all DEI fans, this is a huge win, obviously. It's a woman in this position, first time it's ever happened. And yet, complete silence from all the DEI fans. Really extraordinary. In the same way, by the way, that they were strangely silent when Kemi Bendock has recently, a woman, not only a woman, but a black woman, was appointed to be the leader of the Conservatives in the UK. And not a dicky bird out of all the DEI people, which it was a huge win, by the way, if that's what your game is. If your game is DEI.
I think I've said this before. There's been so many female British prime ministers.
That's right. You'd forget them. You'd forget them. There's too many of them.
You could try and list them.
The problem is that they're all on the wrong side, so that nobody has ever heard of them. They're all conservatives, so nobody's ever heard of them.
Yes.
And the other person they're talking about then is Tom Holman, to become the border czar overseeing Trump's
hopefully he's as good as he is on. I'm just a note of caution. Don't judge someone by their owning of the libs.
Yes, of the clip of a short clip of them at Congress. Well, we'll see. We'll see. He certainly comes across very well. I mean, there's exchanges with him and AOC that are pretty special.
By the time you see this, there'll be lots of other appointments, and so. But one, when we're recording this, RFK still hasn't been given a post, as we discussed this. There's talk about him.
Trump, by the way, has nominated Elise Stefanik to the role of UN ambassador. That is one that's being confirmed. But RFK. Yeah, we haven't talked about RFK really here before, but interestingly enough, there's one part of his curriculum vitae, one part of his past that particularly resonates with us because it's something that we know an awful lot about.
Yeah, he was the chief legal counsel of the River Keepers Alliance, a huge anti-fracking organisation, an organisation that basically has led to the destruction of hundreds of family farms in New York,
upstate New York,
and Pennsylvania, and around basically the Delaware River basin, all around there. There was huge opportunity. Fracking saved many Pennsylvania family farms. The ban on fracking in New York led to the destruction of family farms, and the ban on fracking around the Delaware River basin led to the destruction of many farms.
And we happen to know a lot about that because we did the documentary Frack Nation, which we'd highly recommend.
He's anti-fracking, but he's also anti-science. And by the way, there's nothing wrong, I think, with being anti-science or being skeptical of scientists given how badly they've behaved. But there are certain tests you can do on water, right, that tell you there is nothing wrong with water. You can drink this water. Or if you can't drink it, it's because it was always crap. And this is the thing that most people don't know. A lot of Pennsylvania houses and New York houses have bad water. There's a lot of naturally occurring bad minerals in the water, a lot of gas existing in the water. The science is there, the tests are there. RFK could even have done his own tests with independent scientists.
It's not impressive. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people know a lot more about him in terms of his record on vaccines and what he's got to say about vaccines. But I just think we wanted to just focus on to just mention at least that one part of his background that we would have very serious questions about, because this is something we know an awful lot about.
But it's just
that anyone who's being anti-fracking is the exact definition of being anti-science. There is absolutely no proof of any kind. It's just never happened that fracking has caused a contamination of water, and everyone has had to admit to that. So now you don't hear so much about it. But for him to have that, and I don't feel like he's come out and said, "Look, I was wrong about fracking," and we'll be waiting and watching and hoping to hear that. But it's something to watch out for. And to ask him about.
Can I just say also something, like he started off, he kind of became semi-famous also for leading the original anti-vaccine movement. Remember that?
Oh yeah, totally. No, I think that's actually what he's famous for.
Yeah, and that was a big leftist movement, the anti-childhood vaccine. Now there was right-wingers in it too, but the idea that the MMR vaccines, the childhood vaccines, caused autism, and that
he was so successful with that anti-vaccine movement that actually in a lot of leftist kind of places,
Yes.
like here in California, there was actually becoming a problem with how many children were not vaccinated, and it was creating a problem because of herd immunity and all of that. That this was being broken down, but it was very much of the left.
Very much of that, and I'm not going to say anything here about the bona fides of that movement, right? Because I suspect that vaccines don't cause autism, but you cannot trust, unfortunately, the science. Now you can't trust, and I mean that in a pure way. Unfortunately, they've destroyed their own credibility, and this is how damaging it is. I suspect that childhood vaccines are a wonderful, wonderful thing. And
I think it's pretty very, very comprehensively discounted and has been proved that it doesn't cause autism.
Yeah.
But I think obviously in the recent past, because of the way that the vaccine was rolled out here in relation to COVID, people very, very legitimately have issues in all kinds of ways.
These are the same
vaccines.
pediatrics hand that told us that children at 4 can realize they're born in the wrong gender, and we have to affirm.
That as far as I'm concerned is what has destroyed all credibility in science.
And there are 72 genders.
Yeah,
I mean,
that there's 72 genders and that children can be born in the wrong body.
American Pediatric Association. So unfortunately, these are the people who are telling you that childhood vaccines are safe, right?
It's a massive problem.
I want to ask those. So anti-vaccination agitation is now seen as a right-wing thing, right? Where has the left-wing anti-vax movement gone?
Yes, where are they hiding?
So was it just performative back in the day?
Well, we have to look into that, because it's very interesting, because they did go very silent. They suddenly went silent. They were super active and had lots of things to say, and there were quite famous celebrities who actually were kind of taking the lead on that.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of who it was now, but there was a bunch of there was a woman.
Danny Wahlberg's wife
was one of them.
Heather, no, McCartney or McCarthy. Semi-famous actors and personalities were anti-childhood vaccines, and then this
COVID
grew
came
into
along.
that didn't grow. Then a lot of people were skeptical of the COVID vaccine, and I'd like to go back. I wonder what the figures are now. I wonder, are these lefties giving their children childhood vaccinations again because they don't want to, because they don't want to be associated with the right-wing anti-vaccine movement, which means they never believed, but they were sacrificing their own children. So it's mind-boggling the mental gymnastics they did to get over that. Anyway, we'll come back to that next week, because we'll check out the figures.
No, I think it's worth coming back to that next week. But for right now, one of the most surprising aspects of the election was the rise in the vote in certain sectors, like that Trump seemed to have, really increased the Republicans' share of the vote, and that was nowhere more pronounced. Actually, I think it's very, very much pronounced with the Hispanic vote. So we're going to go over to an interview we did just a little bit earlier with Mary Thomas who's the executive director of the Hispanic Vote Coalition.
Yes.
To kind of unpack a bit of that for us. Let's go over to that now.
So Mary Thomas is the executive director of the Hispanic Vote Coalition, where she led the efforts to reach Hispanic voters. She's previously been the Chief Strategic Growth Officer at the Job Creators Network. She previously held leadership roles at the America First Legal Foundation and the Club for Growth Foundation. And she also served as the political director for the Catholic Vote. And she served as in the Trump administration at the DOJ. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we hear a lot about the Hispanic vote. I suppose one of the first things I want to ask is, well, first of all, is there a Hispanic vote? I know you're leader of the Hispanic Vote Coalition, but is there an actual? I mean, because there's no, in my opinion, there's no such thing as the Irish vote.
Yes. Is this an homogenous group that has a voting bloc?
What is a Hispanic vote? What's a Hispanic?
Well, I mean, I think the Hispanic vote, if you look at, the data, there's 36 million Hispanics in the United States. And do I think that they're a monolithic entity? Like you're saying, there's no Irish vote? No, I don't. But I do think that we've seen that people respond best when you have messengers that kind of can relate to them. When you have an affinity to someone, then you are more likely to listen to their message. So, for example, if your family member tells you, "Oh, why don't you consider, having this kind of cheeseburger or something like that," you're more apt to listen to a family member who you trust rather than someone who's a stranger knocking on your door. So the same thing applies to voting. And so that's why we believe that, although Hispanic voters have a lot of different interests, like all Americans, people were very concerned about illegal immigration and the economy. We just have to find a way to get out into their communities, meet them where they are, listen to them, and then use messengers who are trusted by that community.
Yeah. So how, for those who are not paying attention like the rest of us, as closely, how did the Hispanic vote do in the election? Obviously, none of them voted for Trump because he's a racist.
He's so appalling.
Yes. So tell us how badly he did.
No, no. So he actually had the most Hispanic support of any Republican presidential candidate ever.
Wow. Okay,
It was
there's a
huge.
quote. Wow. And
Yes.
why was that?
Well, I mean, I think people basically they believe in his message. And he was someone also, as we saw him going out to McDonald's and other bodegas and things, he went out and he listened to the people. He listened to their concerns. They were concerned about the economy, even as we were talking about, immigration. Many of the Hispanics that we met were very, very concerned about the situation in our country, about the immigration situation, and losing jobs, not being in safe communities. They were very much against illegal immigration. So I think his message is on those points and how bad the Biden Harris administration's policies were to, all Americans, particularly Hispanics, that just resonated with people.
Yeah. See, if back in the day, we used to go to a lot of conferences, political conferences, where the millionaire consultant class would tell the billionaire donor class that we need to get Hispanic votes, and the way you get Hispanic votes is you be nice to them, and offer them amnesty and open the borders, and of course the billionaire donor class, who doesn't want to be nice, but also it coincided with the interests of the billionaire donor class because they like cheap labor no more than the rest of us, by the way. So it was this confluence, and I don't think you would say that President Trump was particularly nice to the, didn't offer amnesty, didn't offer open borders. Where did he go wrong?
He went wrong. He went right, actually, by talking about the policies that all Americans care about and the American dream. Many Hispanics, even my parents, came to this country for the hope of a better life, for living the American dream. And the Biden Harris administration and radical Democrats have really taken that opportunity away from us. And that's a very big, very important to the Hispanic community. Many, many small business owners, huge percentage of small business owners within the Hispanic community. And they like freedom. They escaped, many of them escaped countries where there was communism, socialism. And so they want to be in a free country. That's why they came to America, the land of opportunity. And that's what Trump is offering to bring back.
Yeah.
A lot of people might think that, Hispanics would particularly be in favor of, of open borders, of, be against deportations. What does this result say about the whole issue of deportations?
I mean, it says that they believe, like most of America believes, that we want to keep our country safe. We want secure borders. If you look at the results in some of the border counties in Texas, it was really remarkable how much they went for Trump. And those areas are heavily Hispanic because they saw the illegal immigrants coming into their communities, wreaking havoc with the gang members and drug dealers and the fentanyl, all those things things going on. So they were among some of the most ardent supporters of, building the wall and stopping this horrific illegal immigration that's really hurting our country in so many ways.
Were you ever worried? I mean, obviously, were you ever worried about Tony Hinchcliffe, the comedian at the Madison Square Garden, and his, garbage gate comments? Were just to remind people, he made a joke about he was concerned about the oceans, that there was a huge pile of garbage out there floating.
Yes, and the name of it was
Puerto Rico. I mean, that was a joke. I mean, he's a well-known. It's a genre insult comic, and he was, he's a well-known insult comic. And from a comedian's perspective, the idea that jokes should have anything, should exist outside of humor is ridiculous. But from a political point of view, were you worried about that joke, or how did you feel about it, and how did you think it affected anything, if it did affect anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not a joke that I myself would make. I'm also not an insult comedian, but I think what that showed and what we're seeing from the results, the historic results that President Trump has achieved, is that people were not looking at, jokes or celebrity endorsements. They were looking at their pocketbooks. What is affecting their lives? What is affecting their children? The indoctrination that's going on in schools. That's what they cared about. They didn't care about, some joke that was made, not even by the president, president-elect himself. So I think it was really about the issues and how much Americans have been suffering. So any other kind of things like this just didn't really impact people.
Yeah. So you said it was his historic. Just remind us of the figures that Trump got this time, and some of the examples you said. Those counties down by the border. Could you give us in figures what this looked like in the real world? Because I know it's historic, but historic is often an overused word.
Yeah, how historic exactly?
Oh, it's actually how historic is that from 2020, he got a 14%, increase in the Hispanic vote. And this, what he got was 46% of the Hispanic vote. It has been documented. It is the largest percentage of the Hispanic vote that any Republican presidential nominee ever has gotten. So that is pure fact, which is wonderful. He got 55% of the support from Latino men. So he even got over, a majority of Latino men, and 38% support from Hispanic women. So both of these things are higher than the last election. And most of the time, Democrats, they thought this was nearly an impossible feat to be able to do this, to get this type of vote. And that is why actually when we were looking at the numbers, we thought that we need a new way to reach the Hispanic community, because we believed, and turned out would be the deciding factor in this election, very, very critical to gain their support. And so that's why we embarked on this, Hispanic voter effort, and President Trump really laid the groundwork with the work that he's done.
So if we're looking at, this being an historic moment for Republicans in getting through to Hispanics, what were the Republicans prior to Trump doing wrong? What direction were they going in that was not resonating with Hispanics?
Yeah, I think they were really not going out to the communities. When we were on the ground in these states, talking to pastors, talking to small business owners and, Hispanic voters, they said they were so grateful. They said, oh, we've never had anyone come out here. We've never had anyone provide us resources and give us tools and talk to us about the issues and listen to us. I think that is one of the major failures that we had. And then we would basically bring people in the last 60 to 90 days, parachute people in, really, door knockers, most of whom don't even speak Spanish. And we would expect them to have a big impact on the Hispanic community. I just don't think that works with really anyone, right? You have to have that affinity that we're talking about. And that's really what our project was built upon.
Well, Yeah,
Can
but
I
we're
just
we're
follow?
talking we're talking more about policy here. In terms of policy, not in terms of mechanics. What were the Republicans doing wrong in the past that Trump
Yeah.
got right?
I mean, Trump talked about ordinary issues that are really impacting people. He listened to what is hurting everyday Americans, and that's what he talked about. I do not think that the messaging, the policy really was there, and it certainly wasn't delivered in the right way to Hispanics previously.
I've got a question on the women, on the Hispanic women who seem to still be very much in favor of the Democrats. And the Democrats spent, as we all know, an extraordinary amount of money and time and energy pushing the abortion story. And, did the abortion story play into the Hispanic female vote? And more particularly, am I wrong in presuming that are we all wrong in presuming that Hispanics are predominantly Catholic? And why didn't that matter more to the women?
Well, I think, you know, we have, there is a large percentage of Hispanics that are Catholic, but there also is a growing movement of Hispanics kind of leaving Catholicism and becoming, uh, doing more evangelical Christian religions, practicing that type of faith. And so I, so that's one thing. We were working with a group of 42,000 Hispanic evangelical Christian pastors, and they are very, very conservative, and we're very open to the message about just getting biblical values back into our country and the message of freedom. So that was wonderful. Hispanic women, I mean, Trump had an 8% gain from last cycle from 2020 in Hispanic women. So I think that was great. Yes, abortion was a huge issue that was being pushed. But one of the things I think was very deceptive about the way that the other side was pushing the abortion issue, you saw many of these ballot amendments, unfortunately, that passed in many states, including Arizona. And when the other side was messaging these abortion amendments, they would say that, people's right to abortion or whatever they perceived as a right to abortion would go away. Right? They wouldn't have any, and it was an attack on women's health care. They did not say that these amendments would allow for the killing of babies, even after they were born, late term abortions, which the majority of Americans are against. So I think, there was a lot of misinformation, as there often is from their side. And that could have played somewhat of an impact in what's going on. But regardless of that, I still think Trump made remarkable gains. And that is why, we want to continue to have this project going on for many, many years, not just during election cycles, because we need to, the Hispanic population is rapidly, rapidly growing. And so we need to make sure that we are bringing our message out to them, a message that I think, as Ronald Reagan says, Hispanics are Republicans. They just don't know it yet. So
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
trying to get out there and help them know it.
I just want to come back to policy, though, rather than door knocking. What was the policies that Trump had that, say, Jeb Bush didn't, or George Bush didn't, or Mitt Romney didn't? What
Policies.
I suppose,
Yeah.
what can we learn from this? What's the worst thing that Republicans could now do in the Hispanic world? Go back. What are the policies that didn't resonate before, and what are the policies that resonate now in the Hispanic community?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think people are they saw what how they suffered under the Biden Harris administration, how they suffered for this many years, and they're seeing it in their pocketbooks. They're having to take multiple jobs. And so with that, we saw how it was during Trump's administration. We had a record of what he did for the economy, how inflation was, everything, the ability of small businesses to have less regulations, all of those things, I think, given how people have been suffering, made a real impact because they knew what was it like, 4 years ago.
Yeah,
right?
but that's the Trump-Harris administration. But I want to make the comparison between Trump and Romney.
Yeah. I mean, I think Romney is, he may have had some of the same policies, but Romney is not someone who resonates with ordinary people, right? He's seen as kind of an elitist and the establishment. So I don't even know that it was about the specifics of his policy, but he's not able to deliver that policy in a way that regular people would really understand and resonate with. Trump has this particular power to be able to connect with people, and I think that's been critical, listening to them, making them feel like they are important. All American, every single American is important.
Okay,
Romney and Bush did not have that capability.
yeah. So what's the worst thing Republicans could do now? How can we lose the Hispanic vote?
By ignoring the Hispanic community. I mean, we need to keep our promises, what we said, get the economy better, inflation down, get this indoctrination out of schools, bring back normalcy to America and the ability of small businesses to thrive. We need to do that, and we need to continue developing relationships with the community and engaging with them as if they are Americans, which they are. We're all Americans, so we need to continue to do that.
Yeah. Well, Mary, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Mary.
I'm hoping that we'll be talking in 4 years' time, talking about the record Hispanic
even
vote.
bigger record.
Yes.
Yeah, even bigger
Yes.
result. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Interesting. So
Yes.
I mean, there's again, I think we. You had.
Well, I mean, look, the Hispanic vote. Obviously, it's amazing. It's not an advertisement, by the way, for opening the borders for more Hispanics to come in. But and also, I wonder actually, will the vote be lent to Trump like it was? I mean, we remember Boris Johnson in the UK. Boris Johnson did.
I meant to say that earlier. Yeah, I mean, Boris. I mean, this is what I mean. We were kind of saying that obviously a lot of people are jubilant about the election results and very excited and very happy. I have to say, I'm nervous because this feels an awful lot like
2019,
the Boris Johnson win in 2019, where he swept the boards. Like, he had everything. He literally had everything. He could have done anything.
But he went
and he did.
not
nothing.
swept the board.
He literally did nothing.
It's wrong to describe it as sweeping the board. He went into seats in Northern England, a conservative, right, a posh, toffee-nosed conservative.
Yeah.
Went into the most working of working class seats,
And he won.
and he won the seats that had never voted Conservative in their history.
And
he won.
people made a big point of it, and they said, I've never in my life, and no one in my family has ever voted Conservative. We've never voted Tory. And they said that, and they did in record numbers. And so he was in a position where he could have really done the things that he had campaigned on. And guess what? He didn't. So that's the one thing that is slightly worrying.
He
me.
didn't do what the people wanted. He did what the media elites wanted him to do.
But Trump is starting out well. I mean, the fact that he's getting some of these names that are coming forward, as I said, including our own dear friend Mark Paletta, we're very hopeful. Phelim, what we are now, one of the things we're going to do now is we want to play.
We want to look at how the Liberals are melting down, right?
Oh God.
And look, this is fun, but it's also, look, you're going to have a lot of Liberal meltdowns. You're going to have a lot of crying. Tears are going to be very used a lot coming forward. You're going to have
screaming as well.
Screaming.
Maybe a bit of screaming.
But there's performative screaming, and then there's, look at what Trump is doing, and this woman's going to die because of something about the border, or because she couldn't get an abortion, or what. There's going to be all this, right? And we want to play some prime examples of that, and
have a
just to show you, in case I know you're busy and all out there, and you may not have seen these, but it is fun actually. So we're going to play Jimmy Kimmel, the well-known, maybe not that well-known, late-night comedian, allegedly
he's funny.
Yes, and this is his, as they say, his monologue. Let's get the brightness up there as well. Oh, that's as bright as it gets. So this is his response, a tiny bit of his response, but it's very indicative of the madness that's going on.
The rest was not great. Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night.
I'm sure it was.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go.
So
Terrible night for children, you know. I don't
How?
know, how is that now? So children, sorry, I think I know the answer to this. It's going to be a terrible night for children because now, going forward, if Trump is successful in what he wants to do, children won't be able to have their healthy breasts cut off. I think that's what he's referring to.
Oh, right.
They won't be able to castrate boys. Children
With
boys,
puberty blockers.
With puberty blockers, they won't be able to do irreversible damage to children. Oh no, that's hard on children.
and the immigrants,
that's sad.
And the immigrants.
And the immigrants.
Well, that's just nonsense. Okay,
and women. Oh no, women won't be able to have in certain places won't be able to have abortions up to 9 months. I think that might be what he's referring to.
Yes, obviously.
Oh, he's crying now. He's crying now.
Climate.
Can we stop that for a moment? And Jimmy Kimmel starts crying, and I'm thinking, honestly, when I heard that first, I was thinking, I must go back and find out how did he behave after 9/11. I mean, what did he have to be hospitalized? So he's crying after an election that was a democratic election where, everything worked out perfectly in terms of the electoral process, and it's all been very peaceful and everything. And he's distraught. He can't even. He's so upset. But by the way, it allows me, I failed to mention the Guardian. By the way, of journalists at the Guardian who needed therapy, and I'm like, these are the same journalists we're expecting to go to Vietnam, to Iraq, to go and cover a riot, to go and cover like a horrendous tragedy when, for example, there might be flooding and people drowning, and they might see people dying of leprosy. These are the same people. He literally is crying here.
Yes.
For science.
For science.
Oh, science.
Journalism.
For journalism.
Oh, journalism.
Like the Guardian journalist.
It was a
Free
terrible night
speech.
for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for
Ukraine.
NATO.
For NATO. For free. I mean,
Oh.
for free speech and for NATO. So this administration that's currently in power wanted to moderate social media, as in censor. NATO. Why would it be bad for NATO telling NATO that it should pay its way?
Yeah. Why doesn't all the countries just pay their way? Why don't they pay their fair share?
Yes.
I thought we were all about paying your fair share.
America pays 30%, 33% of NATO's expenses.
Basically, America's paying for other people.
And America's not under threat. Like, Russia's not going to invade America. It's going to invade these European countries. Now, let's hear. Come on, Jimmy. Give us some more tears.
The truth.
The audience are loving this, by the way.
Democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
Okay, I love this bit at the end. It was a bad night for the people who voted for him because they don't realize it yet. Basically, the people who voted for Trump are too stupid to know that what they've done. They're so stupid. But he's so enlightened. He's so enlightened that he doesn't know the difference between a boy and a girl. That's how intelligent and clever and intelligent and evolved that he is. And on the trans thing, we're going to see another clip in a moment. Actually, let's go to that clip. Actually, the other clip on the trans thing, because I think it's really worth. It really
well,
follows,
funny to me.
It follows on perfectly from
to
here.
me. This clip actually, it also explains why Democrats lost and why they're going to keep losing.
Yes, I think it's very instructive.
So this is a debate, and I think
this is clip two.
It's clip two, Sam. One Democrat light saying we need to look at this whole trans thing and just listen to how he shut down and why he shut down.
And he's a black journalist and liberal, and he's been shut down. Good to hear.
Yes,
There are a lot of families out there who don't believe boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table.
I'm not going to
listen to transphobia at this table. Well, by the way, and the way this should have been answered, by the way, by the moderator was, well, then sure, go off and leave us and let the grown-ups at the table here talk about that. And when you've finished your hissy fit, you can come back and join the grown-ups.
But can you imagine you're at a doorstep, right? And we talked earlier to the leader of the Hispanic Vote Coalition, and the guy says, "I'm very sorry. I don't like that my daughter is in." This is my bad Hispanic accent.
Don't even try it, Phil.
I don't like that my daughter is in a team where there's a boy on the opposite team, and Can you? How do you think you would get his vote if you said, "I'm not going to let you say that. That's
I'm
transphobic."
not going to let you say this. Yeah, I'm not going to. And
So
the worst part about this clip, by the way, is that they allow this white guy to shut down.
the moderator comes in and defends him. What do you hear? But
No,
also,
I know. But she's allowing this white guy to mansplain the other guy.
But
Do you like me using mansplain? Look at me using mansplain.
But the thing is that this, I don't want to give Democrats any advice, but you need to ban the words, for your own good, you need to ban the words transphobic, racist, homophobic, and
Yeah, they don't work.
xenophobic,
It doesn't work.
Islamophobic. But also,
Stupid.
they allow you to not argue the point. I'm not speaking to you because you're transphobic.
Oh, yeah, I'm not even going to. Yeah, that's right. I'm not going to let you finish your point. And
Yes.
in fact, he succeeds.
Please keep doing this because this
No,
means you're
he
going to lose
succeeds.
the next election.
And you call a trans girl a boy.
Are you going to allow me to finish my explanation?
When you use a
Guys,
word
just
that's a
stop-
slur,
just
I'm going to
stop.
interrupt.
Stop.
That's not how it is.
Jay, just
They're
give me-
not
just give me-
boys.
Go ahead.
They are boys, and the reason we know that they're a boy is that they're called trans girl. Like what? They're not girl.
Yeah.
They're called trans girl. So they're an indicator, in fact, that this is actually a boy.
Jay,
Not
give me
boys.
one
They're
second.
not playing girls
Let's just
softball.
reset for
I'm
one.
not going to sit there
Let's
and
reset
listen
for
to
a
that.
second.
Stop that
because
again. For a
Oh,
moment.
let her.
This is a really heated issue, right? And Sharmichael, I know you. I know that you understand that people have different views on this. I think out of respect for Jay, let's try to talk about this in a way that is respectful.
Hang on. So, by the way, Sharmichael, by the way, is incredibly respectful.
Yeah.
And the person who's disrespectful here is the guy called Jay, the white guy, who basically is not allowing Sharmichael to make a point, to make a
Yes.
valid point. And by the way, Sharmichael he's not even saying it's something that he thinks. He said there are people who think this.
That's right.
And he's not being allowed to do that. I heard an interesting observation about this clip, which I'm going to now shamelessly rob, which is, this is why podcasts are doing so well as opposed to these kind of debates in inverted commas.
Yeah.
This isn't a debate, by the way.
No.
Because on podcasts, people don't talk over each other.
but that's more of a technical thing. No,
He's not allowed to speak. He
I know,
doesn't get
but
to say-
that's just a technical thing.
No, he doesn't get that. This guy, Sharmichael, does not get to speak. He has been shut down on television by this guy.
Let me rephrase this since I'm being targeted here.
I don't
There-
think you're not, just to be clear, you are not being
but I
targeted.
am.
You are being targeted.
I'm specifically
It's okay.
saying that I know that you are not intending to be transphobic.
He should know that I'm not.
But
He wants
but
to
I
sit
want
here
you
and
calling you
bloviate
transphobic.
and
But I
I'm
want
saying
you
you're
to.
using
I
a
want.
phrase
I want to
that
give
you
you an
know.
opportunity.
So the way
to
regular
rephrase.
people interpret it,
That's not
which is why
regular
those
people.
ads were
That's not
effective.
regular people. There's no consensus that these are actually boys. This whole thing about trans girls is a canard. We're talking about a tiny, tiny sliver of the
So
population.
we're talking about a sliver of the. This is another thing that they say. It's a tiny sliver, 1%. Well, by the way, it's not 1% because every high school has number in every year now, so it's more than 1%. Also, that 1%, but that's a boy on a girls' team who's playing hundreds of girls over the year, so it affects thousands of percent.
Point in terms
Take
of
away
its
health care from
effectiveness.
thousands
Just
of
get.
people.
Hold on. Just get to your point.
My point in terms of its effectiveness, regular people with children look at these things and they say, you know what, this is a bit too far. I do not agree with this. I don't like this. I think Democrats are going way too much to the left on social issues. They're uncomfortable with it. A lot of people believe that. A lot of families believe that. You may disagree with that reality, but that's why Republicans kept running those ads over and over and over again, because they saw the metrics suggested
And
that they were
lying
working.
in those ads over and over again, and using rhetoric like you just used, saying this is boys playing girls sports.
Well,
Which, first of all, we're
what's
talking
the-
about
what's the
5 people
language?
in the
What's the
entire
language
country.
you would prefer?
We're talking about trans girls being allowed
Trans
to play
girls.
with the people who are in their gender. And if you don't believe, you don't have to listen to me. Listen to the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association,
the American-
American Medical Association. Yeah. Unfortunately, the American Medical Association have, are shameless. We won't be referring to them for any kind of intelligence or rationality. And I always love to make this point, and I think it's really worth mentioning. Don't forget eugenics. Please, please don't ever forget eugenics. The same kind of evolved geniuses like this white guy, Jay, he's the very people, he's exactly the kind of person the elite, who pushed eugenics, who said that we could have the perfect race.
But
and by the way, all of the Jews who died in concentration camps can thank all those elites who had a consensus on something that made no sense. And this is exactly the same thing. This is actually almost believe it or not, it's actually worse than, I think it's worse than eugenics. But this idea, we're being gaslit to believe that a boy is a girl or a girl is a boy. This is, people have to resist it. I feel very sorry for the guy, Shermichael there, who was shut down.
Yeah.
Saying something very legitimate.
I mean, we've other videos, but we'll play those next week. We'll just end with this video because it's a very, very important point. And actually, you bring up eugenics, and people can say, "Well, that was a century ago, and we've evolved." Actually, to me, and that was political, etc. To me, another one is the ulcers. So we grew up in the 80s and that 90s where people had there was a lot of ulcers going around. Remember that people remember that everyone had an ulcer. You weren't and it was caused by stress or diet, right? It was too much coffee, too much stress, and people were getting stomachs removed.
And then one scientist
in Australia said, I think it's caused by bacteria. And he started looking at stomachs and he started seeing bacteria in stomachs of people who had ulcers, right? And he was showed to other scientists and the bacteria was there. And this is in a couple of interviews he's done. And they would say, it's not there. And he goes, it's there. And he goes, that's not bacteria. And he goes, that's bacteria. They would not believe their own eyes.
But they laughed at him and they laughed at him.
The medical consensus was that it was caused by stress. He was saying, no, it was bacteria. And there was a famous incident where he was almost accidentally invited to a conference in LA. He's from Australia. And his wife was invited as well. And the wives were on the bus going to the next speech, and people in front of him, the wives in front of her, were saying, "I hope they don't have that crazy Australian on talking about, really laughing."
Did he end up winning the Nobel Prize?
He ended up winning the Nobel. He ended up giving himself an ulcer, drinking the bacteria because he didn't want to put someone through the agony. He gave himself an ulcer and then cured the ulcer because he knew it was bacteria. So, I mean, look.
Enough for this week.
Enough for this week.
It's been a packed show.
Actually, we have to talk about the anti-Semitic attacks in Amsterdam. So there's been just to say, we're here in New York. We want to bring the October 7th play on to greater and better things.
And the reason we should be doing that is because of the fact that look what's just happened in Amsterdam. Look what just happened in Dublin. A lot of people don't know that there was an anti-Semitic attack.
Yeah, a guy in a pub in Dublin was surrounded by three guys. Are you Jewish? Yes. And then he was beaten up. There was a Jew hunt, an actual physical Jew hunt
in
Amsterdam after a football match from an Israeli team playing in the European Championships. This is the world we're living in. This is the world Europeans are living in, where it's safer to live in Israel than it is in Europe.
Correct.
Now, Israel has experienced, since October 7th, and the country is a permanent war on several fronts, many fronts. It's a net immigration.
30,000 people have moved to Israel.
Yes.
Because they feel safer there than they do in so many places.
So that's why we're continue to push October 7th. So you can help by donating October7theplay.com. Thank you very much for listening to the show.
We'll have lots of news next week from New York.
Yes, thanks. Bye.